I can't believe it's been 30 years and people still remember the film and remember me in the film. It's remarkable.
Wherever in the world I go and meet people, they always say, oh, this film meant everything for me when I was young. This film told me so many wonderful things for my life.
It was not just a commercial success, it was a phenomenon.
Almost everybody I know who saw the movie thought the same thing, that this is going to be one of those movies that becomes a standard, becomes a classic, that generations of children will grow up with this movie.
Michael Ende is the writer of the novel, NeverEnding Story. Was a huge success in Germany and around the world.
And it was not just a novel that people read because it was suspenseful or full of fantasy. No, it was more than that. It was a novel that gave people an idea of the meaning of life.
It was a true event, something what we didn't have in Germany for a long, long time, that millions and millions of people, especially kids, were reading.
Dieter Geisler got the rights from Michael Ende, and he brought it to Bernd Eichinger.
Bernd Eichinger was the head of Constantine, which is a German production distribution company, and he was the producer.
When Bernd Eichinger and Dieter Geisler got into the right situation, got the rights, were able to make the book, it was big news in Germany.
Making films based on famous books is always a controversy because the people who had read this book and liked this book, and therefore they want to see it. Now I want to see the film because I liked everything in this book. And now they're missing things, they're missing scenes.
You couldn't just take the book and turn this into a screenplay. Would be great, but there were so many things which we just couldn't do. No CGI. Everything had to be practical.
What you were doing during production, you invented the special effects. And that made the movie so expensive at the end of the day.
We were just starting this movie and doing this movie when blue screen was invented. So we could use that technique of blue screen.
We had a screenplay which was already agreed upon by Michael Ende and which had still some moments which were technically not possible to make. The big problem started when Wolfgang wasn't sure how to end this movie.
There's one scene in the movie that is not in the novel. That's the final scene. And I have to give credit for that scene to Bernd. Because we were thinking a lot about, okay, how could we end the movie?
I thought it was the coolest thing in a movie like that, where you are so much into Fantasia and you are for a long time just not in our real world anymore. It was just at the very beginning.
And then Bernd said, what do you think of the following? And Wolfgang said, yeah, and then they jump into the trash container.
And I thought it would be the greatest cut if all of a sudden he has never forgotten about how it all started. And we cut from that world right into do it the other way around now, right? Not that he is entering Fantasia world, but he is from Fantasia coming back with the luck dragon into our world.
Michael Ende's philosophy was everything what we read and what we will see in a movie is born in the fantasy of the kid. And so this could not be possible to come into the real world with a Fantasian creature.
He was very upset. He didn't like it at all.
He said, you're trying to do a Disney movie. And Bernie said, of course. And I said, but I have my novel. Novel is not like that.
So everything was ready. Everything was safe. And Michael Ende tried to stop the movie.
He threatened to stop the release of the movie by an injunction.
Lucky enough, the request for an injunction was not given by the court. And to stop a movie with a budget of 60 million German marks would cause a disaster and it's out of proportion. And Michael Ende lost.
It was high stakes, high profile, big deal, big money, very expensive.
We knew that the movie would be enormously expensive.
You better be okay with your nerves, because that's easy in a production like this to lose sleep over this.
I think you need this feeling for yourself to be really inspired and to be really creative.
And then Michael Ende and you're breathing down your neck and saying that you should not even do the movie because it's all wrong.
The creatures had already been designed and were already in the process of construction. It was just a matter of getting the script right and the casting right.
We were looking around the world to find a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful girl who could play the Empress. And finally, after months and months, we found her, and that was basically 2 weeks before we started shooting her, way into production already.
We did a bunch of different looks to try to find the Empress. It was really fun. One day they added all these hair extensions, and it was a long process. Every day, another look, another look, another look.
So when you see her then in the film, her face is something almost ethereal. It's something out of this world, like a creature from a different world.
Wolfgang was a really amazing director, and I felt present and able to focus and do the task at hand because he created an environment that made you be present.
And she did it then beautiful. I mean, she was very talented. And then I come also to one of my 2 or 3 favorite scenes, when she then finally looks away from Atreyu right into the camera, and that means right to us, and it means right into the eyes of Bastian. So Bastian.
Please! Save us!
Oh my God, I got the goosebumps. It was just amazing from this beautiful face. And in this face was so much despair of, if you don't come, our world goes. And that means for every kid out there.
Wolfgang would set the scene. He would come to me and he would sort of look me in the eyes, and he would get down at the same eye level as me, and he'd say, "It's the end of the world. Nothing is gonna be left." And I'd be like, "Nothing? Nothing. It's your job." And I'd be, oh no, you know? So he was very convincing.
He's incredible with actors. He wants to get the power of what he's about to show. He wants to get that across.
Atreyu, no! Atreyu!
Barrett Oliver, the little guy who plays Bastian, he was a sweetheart. I mean, I just loved him. I mean, he was always sitting on my lap between the takes, and we were like my son. So it was just beautiful.
There was a sense that we both came to it with a little bit more of a whoa, where are we?
He was the obvious Bastian because he had these wonderful, big, wandering eyes. And from all the tests we had seen, that was the boy who can dream.
He winds up being, as a child, what I think is perfection in a young man. To have that gentleness of spirit and courage in the same package.
This is going too far.
He had not so much experience with acting before, but he really grew into this part. He felt like a lead in the story, which was important.
Noah and Atreyu was more difficult to find because he had to have this quality of a warrior kid, so very different than Bastian.
He sort of managed to kind of deliver the performances, but then when he wasn't on camera, he was really just kind of playing, and he was like a true 10-year-old boy.
Noah had a lot of training, horse riding lessons.
He was a little pale, so we put him in a tanning salon for 4 weeks.
After all the horse riding lessons, was absolutely believable as the young hero who could overcome all the dangers, all the adventures ahead of him. He was the one who convinced everybody. It was Noah who was our Atreyu.
When you're doing a normal film with some famous actors, then you know more or less what you are doing and what the audience will see. But in this case, of course, you are working with miniatures and with puppets and with everything, and you always have to have in mind, you know, how will this look at the end, and of course, how will it influence the audience.
Slowly, we had a really incredible team together. I started to work with Ulderico, the famous painter.
Ulderico was in charge of all these settings, the landscapes, the world, the look of Fantasia. You go through endless drawings and conceptual things. You put your own ideas in, you take their ideas, and at some point you say, okay, this is a landscape now that is really different than anything we have seen. It has sort of strange glass towers.
I was lucky to convince Giuseppe Tortora to come to Germany. He built the ET, and he was an Italian aircraft engineer originally. He agreed to do all the mechanics for the Luck Dragon, the Rockbiter, for the big ones.
These creatures were sort of a challenge by itself. As you know, there was no computer graphics then. We had to do everything really for real. It's very artistic. You have your freedom to just do what you have in your head. And not only myself, but you have all the people and you have fun together and you create together.
Da war Wolfgang wunderbar und wir haben uns hingesetzt und dann hat er gesagt, lass uns mal überlegen, wie soll denn der Nachtalb, was ist ein Nachtalb? Was macht er? Der geht da an die Fledermaus. Wo lebt er? Wie denkt er? Wie tut er? Und dann habe ich immer gesagt, ja, du weißt, der kommt vielleicht aus der Erde, der lebt, der hat kein Haus, der ist da irgendwie so. Und dann weiß ich noch, dann habe ich so wochenlang so ein Kostüm bearbeitet, dass es eigentlich aussah wie Nature, wie so. So ist der Nachtalb entstanden und da war Wolfgang wunderbar.
We created and wanted to have a dragon that it feels a little closer to what kids sort of relate to. So we gave it a little bit a feel and a look of a dog, a little bit. And sometimes actually, people actually say the flying dog. That was not our intention. And we were always quite upset with it. It's not a flying dog, it's a flying dragon.
To design this huge Luck Dragon, it was like designing an aircraft.
Well, you see, it was so huge, you could only animate parts of this whole thing.
We had the problem how to create a 16 or 15 meter long Luck Dragon and make a neck of 3 meters, make this neck natural and smooth.
It was incredible. They're like these enormous puppets that maybe several people have to manipulate.
For the Rockbiter, we had, I think, 25 people. They were all behind the Rockbiter and down in the basement and everything with little monitors watching them, pulling the eyebrow or pushing the eyebrow up, doing a nose thing here. The smile, sometimes the smile was completely not coordinated, so we had to do it again.
Sometimes you have to slow the movements down because a tiny little puppet has a tendency to make some sharp moves. But you have to shoot it in slow motion so that the moves are more fluent.
And the puppeteers had to learn, first of all, in real time with the playback, because the voice is already recorded. But then they had to learn to do this for slow motion very fast and still be in sync.
And it sounds odd to say I was impressed by the Rockbiter's acting, but I was.
What I like about him is that he is not only biting rocks and eats, but he is a gourmet rockbiter.
A delicious-looking limestone rock.
We had a famous dialogue coach, Bob Easton, who helped train the puppeteers.
And then the nothing. You can open the mouth just slightly wider on the vowel nothing than you have been.
They trained and they rehearsed a lot of things. And when they had the feeling, now it works, then we came in or they came to us and then said, okay, now let's shoot it.
Lean forward, yeah.
Of the creatures I really like, Falco is one of them because he's so charming and he's so friendly and he is so warm. Yeah. And then the opposite of that is the Morla.
We don't even care whether or not we care.
We used a lot of humor, or wherever we could, the fun and the humor there, especially also with that wonderful thing that she's, you know, always sneezing.
Please help me. You said you knew the answer.
It was the idea of Michael Ende, the author, that the less books are read, the less fantasy is coming out of your own brain, the more the nothing grabs you and all the other people.
This was the biggest headache we had in the beginning, how to visualize nothing.
You cannot see the nothing, of course, but you give an expression or an impression from what could be nothing.
Never forget the discussions with Brian. How can we change skies? How can we give the backgrounds an unreal but beautiful, fantastic look? So I said, well, there is one way. He started injecting colored oil into the salt water, and all of a sudden you got these incredible formations looking like clouds, but always moving.
He created a form of the nothing that I thought was very impressive and very good.
The nothing.
We wanted to show how massive the effect of the nothing is when it really hits Fantasia and it's about to destroy everything.
There's one scene when the storm comes up and he is hanging on the tree and the storm blows him to the side.
It has to be dramatic. So it's an enormous, powerful force, like a gigantic storm, wind, whatever it is, but evil.
This was a thing which I built for him, kind of gimbal, where the camera was on that gimbal.
The camera was moving with the set. So when we had all the effects coming and all the wind blowing and everything, when the set moved to the side and then he was more and more like hanging from the tree, it looked on the screen later on like he was just parallel to the ground, being blown in that direction by the wind.
The first day I got there, they said, oh, do you want to go see a scene that's being filmed? And I said, sure, and there was a big tent. And so sort of opened the tent, and it was mud for seemingly miles. I just couldn't imagine how trucks had brought that much mud, and trees, like ginormous trees.
Swarms of Sadness was a very, very big set in stage 4-5 in Munich, Bavaria Studios. You see that it's a very, very big area of swamp with the fog and everything. And it's by far the saddest scene in the film.
It was very, very hot because it had to be very steamy, the air, to give this feeling of the swamps and the fog. Everything is wet and slivery and whatever.
One of the really scary moments is when the horse drowns.
That was very hard to shoot because in horse, as you know, and it slowly sinks and just stops reacting, stops fighting.
There was first a big hole in the floor. And there was, of course, a hydraulic platform underneath where the horse gets on the platform. And now the hydraulics goes down. So the horse is sinking in the mud more and more and more.
We had 2 or 3 horses for this and a great trainer from England. And he trained these horses to do exactly the opposite of what the instinct would tell them. And that, I think you need like 3-4 months before you get there. But then slowly, they lose their fear and they do it because they always get the result out that nothing happens to them. It works. If you do it over and over again, they get used to it.
And when the scene was shot, Noah starts to cry and the horse really must have felt this is the end. The look of the horse was unbelievable.
You have never actually seen a scene like that. You have never seen that right in front of your eyes and he tries to hold him and he goes down. There were tears everywhere.
The music in the film is almost traditional, but with big orchestra, also interesting sound effects mixed into it.
This film, it was also interesting in many other films I have done. For me, it was always very important to have melodies you can recognize and keep in your inside.
Giorgio Moroder, very famous composer and very successful at that time, was hired by us to come up with something what we called, first of all, a song. Very simple. We had no song in the German version. And the NeverEnding Story song is his song. But not only that, he should also come with some musical elements and additional takes that were done not in the more classic way, what Klaus Doldinger did, but with synthesizer and a bit more contemporary feeling for the kids out there. And so the score is the unusual thing that we mixed the basic score from Klaus Doldinger with a slightly different style of a score for special scenes by Giorgio Moroder. This wonderful message in the book is go with your dreams. So what I said is I've never done a fantasy film like this, so just look inside, believe in yourself, and do what you dream. And that was liberating. That was wonderful. And all of a sudden you feel yourself being like a kid. Let's say I've never before directed a luck dragon, right?
That's an essential part of childhood, is the ability to dream those dreams and to imagine that kind of fantastic world and to be so totally absorbed in a story yourself.
I think the concept of the importance of the imagination is a really amazing one.
And when I see the movie again, it still works for me. I mean, suddenly I'm no longer the one who was involved with that movie. Then all of a sudden, I'm part of the audience again.
It is with every good fantasy film or fairy tale or so, there is something behind all the fun and all the creatures and all the scary stuff. There is some messages, some meaning, something what helps kids to see the world and get through the world better. And this whole idea of do what you dream, believe in yourself, and try to live the dreams, because that's what life is all about. If you do that, you create a whole wonderful world, Fantasia.
You know, 30 years is a long time, and then on the other hand, when it's your own life, it's in some ways a blink of an eye. I remember the time, I remember being that girl. It's fun, it's such a special thing to have a kind of a record of who you are.
This was a great experience, and I'm very proud of the film. And just having in mind that me and all of us, the whole crew, did a film like this the first time, with all the problems what we had and what we felt and what we had to overcome. This is a very special film who stands a little bit a while, maybe, in film history.
Es war aber eine wunderbare Arbeit, und ich habe wunderbare Menschen kennengelernt. Und es war eine schöne Arbeit.
When we started the movie, we didn't know where we would be ending up, where we would be going. Could we succeed with all the special effect dreams we had?
We knew this is an experience that is a one and only experience. That, like that, will never happen again.
Shooting the NeverEnding Story was an adventure from the first day until the opening of the film.